Andrea, would you please call the roll?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 2:13 p.m. As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Ms. Turner.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Ms. Baker. Ms. Baker is absent. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Council President Jones.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. Andrea, has anyone signed in for public comment?
Yes. Kate Warren and William Tarter.
Good afternoon, Council President Jones and council members. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having us. My name is Kate Warren. I'm the director of the Greater Cleveland American Rescue Plan Coalition, housed at the Center for Community Solutions. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Will Tarter, who's a policy fellow with our community impact team at Community Solutions. And I'm here today to talk about some recommendations from our Greater Cleveland American Rescue Plan Coalition. So we're a coalition that's dedicated to tracking ARPA funding and doing advocacy related to pandemic recovery broadly. And over the past year, our coalition has convened 30 partners from across the civic sector in Greater Cleveland on our steering committee and has engaged over 140 organizations from the community and many more community members through work groups and public meetings. Through that process, we have identified 10 areas where investments are needed to ensure an equitable and just recovery for Greater Cleveland coming out of this pandemic. We've identified some specific asks, which we hope that the county will allocate ARPA funding to address. And we outlined those in a letter that we sent to Council President Jones and County Executive-elect Chris Ronayne today. And so we're here today to talk about those recommendations. We are grateful that the county has allocated over $53 million to address issues in our priority areas already, but we know that there is a lot of work to do to ensure that we build a true recovery for Cuyahoga County. So our recommendations in the letter fall in 3 categories. The first is to invest in ending homelessness and creating affordable housing. So some of the ways the county could do that are to invest in establish a housing trust fund that can invest across the affordable housing continuum. We can make investments to end unsheltered homelessness. We can provide dynamic rental assistance. We can preserve and expand existing permanent supportive housing to meet the county's goal to end chronic homelessness. The second category is around investing in economic and workforce solutions. That could look like things like literacy and numeracy initiatives in the county, a guaranteed income and employment program, a minority business enterprise loan fund, Main Street and small business support in neighborhoods and communities around the county, supporting initiatives to attract and retain behavioral health care workers and other frontline workers like social workers, counselors, community health workers, and other professionals, and supporting early childhood workforce stabilization as well. The third category is around investing in a healthy and whole community. So this could look like things like making arts and cultural investments for and with marginalized communities, providing capital funding to support renovation of early childhood centers, supporting implementation of a care response model in communities around the county, and supporting sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse survivors. These are some of the things that rose to the top as key needs in our community, and we hope that you'll consider them with remaining ARPA funding. And I'll turn it over to my colleague Will, who has some things to add.
All right. Recognize there's not much time. In addition to what Kate has said, as a member of the community impact team, it's important to recognize that the American Rescue, just to finish the sentence. All right, thank you. Important to recognize that the American Rescue Plan Act guidance describes the spirit of the ARPA dollars as it recognized the disproportionate impact of the pandemic and the need to respond in a way that could seek to meet the needs of the public during the recovery. And Community Solutions stands ready to assist as the future of these ARPA dollars are being considered. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present. All right, thanks.
Josiah Quarles.
Good afternoon. My name is Josiah Quarles. I am the Director of Organizing and Advocacy at Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. I second much of what was just stated before me, and am here today particularly because there something on the agenda for creating a pot specifically out of the ARPA funds to fund the jail project, which was put on hold, and the county executive has said that he was against the initial plan. The council seemed to want to generally take a pause until the executive was put into office, which I think was a good idea to reevaluate and really laser focus on moving our interventions upstream rather than continually trying to work the back end of bad results of what our systems have created. So I feel that this kind of earmarking of funds that are ARPA funds that are supposed to be about recovery from the pandemic, which had a lot of adverse effects for people's mental health, for their housing stability, and we know that this plays out within systems along racial lines in very disparate proportions. Right now, we are watching as on December 2nd, the final emergency rental assistance applications are being taken. So after December 2nd, there will be no emergency rental assistance that has been available throughout the pandemic. And to take this pot of money and instead of putting it towards housing, instead of putting it towards establishing a permanent seasonal shelter, well, where we just saw that one of the cogs in our seasonal shelter was shut down by building and housing, and churches across this greater Cleveland area for decades upon decades have filled in the gaps where our systems have failed. We are now shutting them down and moving them out and putting people, I mean, last year with all of the money that we had, someone still died on Public Square without a home, freezing in the cold. So for us to dedicate this ARPA money to a jail before community partners have come back in to reassess how we can really target lowering our population, how we can really target moving care upstream into our community and into our communities, I feel is a grave mistake. And I would really think it behooves this committee to not pass this measure. Thank you for your time.
That concludes the public portion comment for this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. At this time, matters that have been referred to committee. At this time, I will pass the gavel to Mrs. Councilwoman Stevens, who will chair this portion of our committee meeting.
Madam Clerk, if you would read the sections that are reference to our committee.
Resolution 2022-0392, awarding a total sum not to exceed $1,500,000 to the City of Brook Park for the Brook Park Central Campus Green Storm Project from the District 2 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Is there someone here to present this to us today? If they would come to the microphone and please give us your name and the title and your position with the organization.
Absolutely. I'm Mayor Ed Orcutt from the City of Brook Park. I'm here today, and I'd just first like to say good afternoon and thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of County Council. Today, we're here to talk about our project in Brook Park, which is Greenstorm. Greenstorm will be the raising of a 111,000 square foot school that was built in 1959. It since has been abandoned by the Berea School District and left on our municipal campus. It takes up about 5 acres of our municipal campus of building and parking lot. Our intentions are to raise this building and to be able to put one of 3 of our retention basins that we have for the future here in Brook Park. Brook Park has been notorious for its name, Brook, for having a lot of flooding issues. And one thing that we're trying to mitigate there is the flooding issues into about 20% of our homes, where we get heavy rainstorms and all of a sudden people are losing thousands and thousands of dollars of their belongings. So This project right here is steered directly to impact in a positive way the residents of Brook Park. I didn't know if anybody had any questions or comments for us.
Mr. Miller?
Madam Chair, my colleagues, I'm pleased to strongly support this project. Just the demolition of the school building would be impactful in itself. It's right in the center of the town and is a major safety hazard, and so that's very positive. But the retention basin adds another environmental dimension, and it's very similar to two projects that were done in other communities, and so I encourage my colleagues to support the legislation. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Will this cover the total cost of the project, Mr. Mayor?
It will not. It will not.
And the balance of funds?
The balance of funds will be about $200,000 that we will have to take out of our Economic Development Fund.
And when do you believe you'll get started with the project?
If this is granted to the city of Brook Park, we will be putting legislation forward as soon as possible. It's already generated, and we look to have this project completed in the year of 2023.
So you'd encumber the balance of funds from the economic development pool?
Say that once again?
You'd encumber the balance of funds from the economic development pool?
Yes.
Okay. If there are no further questions, Mr. Mayor, as is this county body's procedure for ARPA funds, this will go into additional readings for public hearings, and at the third one, if there is no strong opposition, it should pass. But I believe there's support of the body for this. Congratulations and good luck.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
See you, Mayor. Mr. President, could you have my name? Madam Chairwoman, would you consider item?
Yes. Is there anyone else who would like to have their name added? Madam Clerk, you have Mr. Sweeney's name.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Resolution 2022-0394, awarding a total sum.
Madam Chair,
Yes, excuse me.
did we have a voice vote on the legislation?
I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Madam Clerk, you and I both forgot.
Move to approve for second reading.
Who's the first?
Second, Conwell.
Thank you. Is there any other conversation? Hearing no further conversation, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are no oppositions.
Resolution 2022-0394, awarding a total sum not to exceed $97,170 to the City of Lakewood for the Alternative Fuel Circulator Feasibility Study from the District 2 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
I see a delegation from Lakewood. If you would step up to the table, please, ma'am. As you know the role, you identify yourself and the community and your position.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor Megan George, City of Lakewood. Thank you, Councilman Miller, Cuyahoga County Council, for inviting me here today to speak on behalf of the City of Lakewood to discuss the funding of the Alternative Fuel Circulator Feasibility Study. This is an exciting project for the City of Lakewood and an opportunity to serve a city with over 50,000 residents, hundreds of small businesses, tens of thousands of workers, and hundreds of thousands of weekly visitors. Lakewood is also home to many senior citizens and low to moderate income residents who find it difficult to find access to affordable and safe transportation to serve their basic daily needs. Our city previously had a circulator service, which was eliminated in 2009. And since that time, the City of Lakewood has sought a solution to restore flexible mobility for residents through affordable fares and convenient access. Currently, Greater Cleveland RTA bus routes and Rapid Light Rail exist through adjacent to Lakewood, but they do not provide direct access to many local destinations and do not meet our community's needs for smaller scale mobility. This ARPA funding would provide a real opportunity to address this long-standing gap in access and transportation. The City of Lakewood, in partnership with the Ohio Aerospace Institute and the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, is requesting Cuyahoga County District 2 funding in support of the Alternative Fuel Circulator Feasibility Study. The study would examine the public need and benefit of a circulator service, ridership potential, operational options, synergies with RTA and other transit providers, financial costs and benefits, and finally, mobility benefits and impacts. This study will specifically look at connecting more of the Lakewood community to these larger pass-through public transportation routes to enable residents and visitors alike to reach all corners of Ohio's most densely populated city and the third largest city in Cuyahoga County. Because the City of Lakewood takes a proactive approach to sustainability, the study will investigate the economic impact of the circulator options to be explored and the environmental impact on the community of reducing cars on the streets. Most importantly, the study will be data-focused to develop a complete understanding of Lakewood's needs and the potential capacity for the City of Lakewood and its partners to support an ongoing restoration of the circulator. The study will explore potential ridership, including total trips and mileage, and what percentage of our population will use this service. It will also examine costs and efficiency, quality and performance, capital and maintenance costs, and community benefits such as economic and environmental benefits. Finally, public input and engagement will be a vital component to the feasibility study to confirm demand and support the value of the circulator. The feasibility of options will be evaluated, ranging from the city supporting the circulator with our general fund, philanthropic dollars, and special improvement district options. The City of Lakewood and our partners feel confident this study will support the community and benefit the circulator. Thank you very much for considering this proposal.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Is this part of your community health assessment needs?
This is not within the community assessment needs. This is something that was developed outside of that a bit. As mentioned in my statement, the community used to have a circulator. It was highly used by many seniors, many low to moderate income individuals, and it's something we've discussed for years, and this is a real opportunity to bring that circulator back. In fact, I was at one of our senior facilities recently, and the topic of the circulator was brought up because they're having issues, especially post-COVID, with getting places around town. So this will certainly help our seniors and our low to moderate income individuals.
When do you plan on undertaking this study?
As soon as we receive the funding, we will begin the study.
So you've already issued your request for proposal?
That's correct.
And selected a contractor?
That's correct.
Who's the contractor?
Iteris?
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Miller?
just a few comments that last mile and short distance transportation is an issue that's becoming increasingly significant and important in our community. And I know that transportation is one of our incoming executive's priorities. And Lakewood is one of the densest communities in anywhere in the country, and I believe if a program like this would work anywhere, it would work in Lakewood, and I think there's a high level of commitment and strong partners, and I firmly believe that this isn't a study that's just going to be done and sit on the shelf. I'm very confident that it will lead to a solution that will be very valuable for Lakewood and perhaps might be a model for other communities. And so I recommend this to my colleagues and ask for your consideration. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment? Any final words from you, Mayor, or your staff?
Again, just thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Do I hear a motion in favor of this project?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to favorably recommend 2022-0394 to the full council for second reading.
Is there a second?
Second. Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion, it moves forward to the standard readings for ARPA before the full body. Congratulations, Mayor George and staff. And we'll move on to the next issue on our docket.
For the record, I would like the record to reflect that Ms. Simon is in attendance. Resolution 2022-0396, awarding a total sum not to exceed $750,000 to the West Park CAMS Neighborhood Development for the Old Lorraine Connector Project from the District 2 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Is there someone representing West CAMS today? Aye. The drill is to identify yourself and the organization and your position with the organization.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I'm Rosemary Moudry, the Executive Director of West Park CAMS Neighborhood Development. I'm really excited to be here presenting this project. This is a project many years in the making. Really, for decades, residents and businesses and the City of Cleveland have talked about ways to better connect City of Cleveland residents, specifically those living in Ward 17 and on the far west side of Cleveland, to Rocky River Reservation. Many of our suburban communities already have multiple pedestrian connections. They have beautiful pathways, but for the majority of residents living even a quarter mile from the metro parks, there's no way to access the park without a car. And even the car access is limited by Old Lorraine Road, which is very narrow and has some major challenges to it. So over the last couple years, we embarked on a study to look at, is there a feasible way, given the extreme terrain and topography of the area and narrowness of Old Lorraine Road, to create a pedestrian and bicycle connection to the park. And so what we came up with in partnership with the Metro Parks, the City of Cleveland, and our office is a trail connection that would begin at the bottom of the hill in Rocky River Reservation near the Little Met Golf Course, wind along the road, and then wind back into the reservation a bit and come up close to residents on River Edge Road. This trail connection would provide thousands of residents access to the park for the first time by foot and by bicycle. It would also provide thousands of business owners and employees of major institutions in the neighborhood, including Fairview Hospital, the businesses in Camps Plaza, and the rest of the Camps Corners Business District, with better access for and support in attracting folks to the area. If there's no further question,
See, Mr. Miller, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I'll just comment that this is a very exciting project that I think might not get done for years if it weren't for our providing this assistance. And there's very favorable leverage on this. So we're requesting $750,000 from ARPA, which the City of Cleveland is going to match. And we may also be able to get support from the hospital to help include access for hospital employees and patients that are very, very nearby. And the Metro Parks will maintain the trail once it's completed. So this is truly a partnership that's going to be very beneficial for our community, and I urge my colleagues' support.
Anyone else like to comment? Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Welcome. Exciting as can be, and going down the old cow path is no longer an option. And what gear would you have to ride up the hill?
Oh, Lord.
As steep-wise, is it winding? And
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons not to follow the road all the way to the
Straight.
top and
It's
to
too
wind
straight.
in. The part of the key of the engineering study was to get the slope at a level that meets sort of the national bike standards for hills, which also gets you not quite to ADA, but gets you to a level where most people in motorized scooters or somebody pushing a stroller could make it up the hill as well. So that was the goal, was to be able to wind it through the metro parks in a way that helped create some switchbacks, would allow space for there to be some rest points with benches and things like that so people could get up and down.
That's incredible. Just a motorized vehicle is a great threshold. That gives some independence to one of the greatest natural resources that we have around here. So keep up the great work, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Well, for one thing, any additional walking trails in our community are a great benefit to all of us. For those of us who are not wealthy, it is one of the ways you can maintain your health and your independence longer by simply walking. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion in support of this project?
Madam Chair, I'll move that we favorably refer Resolution 2022-0396 to the full council for second reading.
And who's that second from?
Second, Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
If there's no opposition, this moves forward to the full council for the full hearings. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much.
Resolution 2022-0405, authorizing Cuyahoga County match funding forgivable loans to various organizations in the total amount not to exceed $5 million for various projects in connection with the State of Ohio Brownfield Remediation Funding Match Program for the period December 1st, 2022 through November 30th, 2025 for the various organizations, numbers 1 through 18.
Mr. Hurtig, is this yours?
Good afternoon, Council President, Chair. Paul Hurtig, Director, Department of Development. I believe we have slides. Andrea, if they're loaded. If not, I'll talk without them. We are bringing to you a recommendation to make 18 forgivable loans for brownfield cleanup projects. We had originally thought we might invite all 18 developers here and let them give testimony, but we realized how that would totally destroy council's schedule. We said, let's not do that. But I do have with me summaries of all the 18 projects, should any detailed information be needed. By way of background, I think it's well known to council and to the public that there are certain sites that need to be cleaned up before they can be put back in productive use. This is particularly the case here in Cuyahoga County. We're an older industrialized county. Most of the land we have is not greenfields. It's been used for something else, and many of those past uses have left chemicals behind that need to be cleaned up. If we don't do this, we're going to continue to lose business to other places where they have greenfields, which is not the outcome we seek. We seek to have businesses come and locate here, use our land, our buildings for economically viable uses. The current market demand, as it's been for a while, is to have land that's ready, buildings that are ready. Prospective users don't want to be told, we can get that cleaned up for you, it'll take about 3 years. They want to be told, we've had this cleaned up, the land is ready now, the building is now free of asbestos, you can use it now. So we really need to continue to support the cleanup of brownfields to be competitive. And as a quick example for this, there's been some excellent work done along Opportunity Corridor. Since the road was put in, assembling all those small parcels has been a daunting task, but it's underway. And in fact, one of the projects before you is related to Opportunity Corridor. It's to complete the cleanup of a pretty good sized site right at the end of the corridor. So it's an example of how we're able to get some of this older land back into productive use so we can have new businesses come there. Recently, the state of Ohio put aside in its current budget funding for brownfield cleanup grants. And we in Cuyahoga County were very fortunate to have developers and owners compete for these grants. So far, There's some additional announcements to be made, but so far there's been 39 projects here in Cuyahoga County that have won $60 million of state funding from the state brownfield grants. That's a very good result. Each of these projects needs a local match. The state only gives 75%. So just for the local match for this $60 million worth of projects, we need at least $15 million. Now, that doesn't all come from the county. Developers can go to cities, they put in their own funding towards the projects, but being able to contribute towards the local match in many cases is the difference in a project being able to go forward or not. So recognizing this, early this year, $5 million was set aside by agreement between the county executive and council leadership, and it was publicly announced that this $5 million of the county's money due to ARPA would be used for this purpose. And we're now bringing to you later in the year that same $5 million to be allocated. We had a panel of experts review the applications. We had our Board of Control authorize a competitive process, and some of the factors that the panel looked at included, first of all, the location. You know, is the project in either the core city or an inner-ring suburb? Is it an area that's been described as being a job hub, one where it's desirable for jobs to be created? Is it an area of low and moderate income residents? And is it in one of the county's equity zones, which we've, as council knows, designated through a long process? Other things the committee looked at were what would the results, the outcomes be? Would the project itself create affordable housing units? Would it create new jobs? Would there be leverage? In other words, we didn't want our money to be all the money in the project. Would there be other funds, either private funds, city contributions, to match our funds? And the more leverage, the higher rated the project. We looked at the developer's willingness to commit to using minority-owned remediation contractors because we feel that's important across the board. And we finally looked at whether the project was ready. Would it be able to get going upon approval of our funding? So the committee scored all the applications this way, and based on the scores that were assigned, some of the requests were fully funded, others were funded at a smaller level. You have in the agenda printed out the recommended 18 awards. The amounts of these awards are actually $672,000 is the highest for the Westinghouse project, and they go all the way down to $42,000 and change for the Bridgeworks project, which is the reuse of the old county bridge garage in the near west side of Cleveland. So overall, there are 18 projects recommended for funding. The majority are in Cleveland. There are also projects in Cleveland Heights, Euclid, and Garfield Heights. The average award works out to $278,000, and the $5 million of county funding leverages $28.9 million of state grant funds, which is a pretty good leverage ratio. So with your favorable recommendation and then the full council passage on third reading, the next steps our staff will take will be we will work with each developer to close a forgivable loan. Why are we doing a loan? We want to be sure the project gets done. By putting in the form of a loan, we retain some control so we can follow up, verify the project's been completed, then we give them their loan forgiveness. That's how we kind of make sure it happens. We will put out the loan funds, disperse the loan funds as we normally do for our loans, which is as the work is done, as we see invoices, as we verify the invoices are real, we will disperse the money to pay those invoices. I did note the forgivability. This will be upon the cleanup being completed, and with our experience in doing brownfield projects, we know what paperwork to get to verify the cleanup is done. And then even after the loan's forgiven, the developers will continue to report to us what their project accomplishes. So we'll be able to track and then report to the public what exactly this $5 million accomplished. So with that, I stand ready for any questions from the committee.
So once we fund this, the brownfields money is in place from the state of Ohio, and these projects can all move forward immediately.
That's correct, Councilman. One of the factors we rated on was readiness to proceed.
And what is the longest amount of time any one of these will take to complete?
Councilwoman, I don't have that information in front of you. We can get that to you exactly. Typically, a cleanup is going to be on the order of 6 months to a year, just because of the engineering work involved and the fact that it has to be done according to state standards and inspected as they go.
So you're hoping all the cleanup work is done in a year?
We would anticipate, and by the end of next year, we'd be able to report all cleanups done.
Okay. Is there anyone else who has questions? Ms. Conwell?
Through the chair to Director Hurdig, how many bids were submitted in total?
Councilman, we received 18 eligible applications, and all 18 were recommended for funding.
Okay, so it's just 18. And how was the rewards, how were they determined?
So, Councilwoman, the rating committee assigned 100 rating points for each project, very familiar 100-point rating scale, and the projects with the highest ratings were recommended for full funding, and the projects with the lower ratings were recommended for only a percentage of their request. That's how we were able to fit the awards into the $5 million that was available.
Okay, and number 7 and number 10, the Spartan Alumni Rowing Association, wouldn't that be a part of the Foundry project or no?
Councilwoman, thank you. These are actually two separate and distinct projects, very close in geography, but actually completely separate in their intended uses. As it happens, the Foundry project representatives are here today, though we've not let them know they need to speak. Their project is related to an arts facility where artists will be able to do their work, whereas the Spartan Rowers actually are a rowing facility.
Right, hold on, Sharon. My other, I would like my name added on this, of course. And then I just want to be clear about the 5 million. So we're saying we're matching. So all these 18 projects, do they add up to $5 million?
Yes, Councilwoman. Our recommended awards are total to exactly $5 million.
Okay, and so where does the state play a role? Are they matching that 5 million, which we get an additional, or I'm not clear?
So thanks, Councilwoman. So a typical project would have, for example, it would have $3 million that was awarded by the state of Ohio and $1 million that needed to come from other sources. Our forgivable loan is part of that $1 million. So when we say we are matching the state funds, we are providing a part of that 25% match that has to come from somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Certainly. Mr. Schron?
How many of these have end users that are already ready to go? And how many of the end users are actually revenue producing versus a social program?
Councilman, I do not have the exact numbers available, would have to review and send you a report, but there's a range of expected end uses from known to speculative. I will give an example of speculative. One of the projects at 4900 Woodland is a speculative project. This is our biggest opportunity corridor project. It is not known precisely what use will be attracted there once the land is cleaned up, but because it's located on an opportunity corridor, it's in the area where we're targeting food industries as end users. But we do not have, that project does not have its agreement signed with an end user yet. This is to get it ready for the market. We do have some with identified end uses ranging from housing development to the arts project we talked about. I will say for the most part, the projections of housing units and jobs created were found to be reasonable. We are not requiring guarantees on these as we do on our economic development loans.
Having served on the Clean Ohio Fund, one of the ways in which you got scored points on a more positive nature was to have an end user that was going to be job creating in their project. And you're telling us you don't know how many of these 18 have end user job creation components to them at this moment?
Councilman, again, we don't have the exact figures. I will tell you that it's not the majority of the projects. It was not a requirement we imposed on these projects.
So that was not then even a scoring criteria?
It is a rating criteria and was considered by the committee. The extent to which job creation is an expected outcome, we did not, however, require it.
I guess I kind of a little confused there. I don't require it, but I'm going to score you on it. That seems to be an oxymoron in my opinion.
Councilman, if with your permission, we can follow up with analysis of the 18. We'll break them out and, specify what each one stated would be its job creation, which we will be tracking.
Okay, and having lost a number of projects because of land mass not being associated, what's the largest land mass that's being associated with these 18 projects? How many acres or that we would be looking at here?
Councilman, again, we would have to get you the exact number. We have ranges here up to 40 acres, which is the site of the 4900 Woodland project, and some are smaller than that. There's none significantly larger than 40 acres, though.
40 acres is the largest we've got.
Yes.
So we're not going to be able to land a big project at a 40-acre site. It's a pretty good sized building. You can put a pretty
Thanks, Councilman.
pretty sized business in there, but it's
We're
not,
certainly not chasing
not going
Intel
after Intel, right?
in that site, nor, and this is serious, we're not going to be able to attract a standalone battery manufacturing plant in 40 acres, but we will be able to get a advanced manufacturer who'll be in the supply chain of an Intel or a battery plant or an electric vehicle plant. And we are definitely targeting some of these sites towards those supply chain industries. For example, for the new electric vehicle plant that's going in out in Avon.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Miller?
So, Director, for the projects that are being funded at less than the full amount, do we know that in all of these cases that there's sufficient money from other sources to meet the 25% match requirement?
Yeah. Thank you, Councilman, for the question. Because we couldn't negotiate before announcing the awards, this is an item that will be covered as we close the loans. We will, among other things we collect from each project, collect an updated capital stack indicating they do have a full source of funds for their project. So that will be a condition for closing.
And Director, you mentioned earlier about other projects totaling $60 million, of which these are some of them, but the total group of projects would require $15 million in match money. Are there other projects that where the state is willing to support, but that we have not yet identified source for match money?
Thanks, Councilman, for the question. There are several kinds of projects that the state gave money to that aren't here. The first kind is projects that were just at the stage of assessment, where the developer's only doing a phase 1 or phase 2 environmental assessment with state funding, so not ready yet to ask for the cleanup funding. So we did not consider those projects. We said you're not eligible because we're just funding cleanups. The second group would be projects that, for whatever reason, the developer did not apply and, apparently had enough funds from other sources. They did not need to come to us for funding. And then the third group, which we don't know the size yet, is those that may get funded in a third round of state funding. There was some leftover money at the state level. The state opened their application window again in July. It filled up very quickly. I think the window was only open for about a day. And we're checking with a lobbying firm to see if they can find out where that stands. We know the state hasn't announced those awards yet. There may be some additional awards from Cuyahoga County in that so-called third state round.
So, Director, am I hearing you correctly that we've provided at least some funding for all such projects that are development, are cleanup projects as opposed to assessments, and are ready to go at this time?
Yes, we were able to recommend funding for all the eligible applications we got from the state round 1.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Gallagher?
What is our exposure?
Thanks, Councilman. As with any loan agreement we negotiate, one of the things our law department's going to be doing is requiring insurance to be carried, so that as a lender into a cleanup project, there's always a consideration of liability. So we routinely require the project developer to have the insurance in place that will cover us for that potential environmental liability.
So that would be in perpetuity?
It would be, again, we have a risk management unit that this is not new for them. We've done brownfield lending for a while that gauges what's required based on the particular project. So we will be requiring the same insurance we do with any of our other brownfield transactions.
Assume the same with the state? The state's involved in these?
Councilman, I can't speak to the state's position on this. I can only speak to our practice.
Here's my concern, is as we've recently found out that the old jail site that was going to get picked, that now is so super toxic, which it isn't, but it is because certain people say it is. And had we bought it, we were going to get sued by our own council because of that. Potential problems in the future, in perpetuity, I would assume. My concern is, have we not changed the rules or moved the goalposts when we put money into projects where we're dealing with toxic soils, much like the east bank of the Flats, which we put money into? A guarantee, which evidently was more toxic, from my understanding, than the site that was picked for the jail. I'm wondering about the exposure there. I know you don't know that, but I'm worrying, have the goalposts been moved because of the allegations that property can't be remediated?
Councilman, what I can say is that our risk management unit monitors the situation with insurance, what insurance costs, how liability insurance is priced, and, should there be an industry change, our risk management folks would be on top of that.
My concern isn't for today, it's for tomorrow. And what we have put on the record in public hearings, I'm concerned that it puts us behind an 8 ball in perpetuity when we're dealing with situations like this. But I guess I don't think I'll be around for that, hopefully not, but I am concerned that when we talk publicly, we sometimes put ourselves at a disadvantage, trying to do the right thing.
Anyone else with concerns? Mr. President?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Councilman Gallagher asked many of my questions, but I think this is an educational moment. Tell us, of these diverse 18 projects, what are some of the environmental issues with the soil? Is it benzene, methane, something else? What are we looking at?
Thank you, Councilman. Each project is different. In general, we tend to see asbestos cleanup as one major theme, in particularly where there's buildings involved, because asbestos was so prevalent as a building material, it simply wasn't known for quite some time that it was going to be a problem. So asbestos cleanup is one of the things we see. We also see in certain cases where there have been underground storage tanks where gasoline was stored, the leakage out of those tanks is a common situation that has to be properly cleaned up. Beyond that, it gets to the history of the site, what was manufactured there. For example, one of the sites that's being cleaned up with this funding is the old Westinghouse building on the west side of Cleveland, where there was manufacturing for a number of years that just had chemicals used in the process, which now have to be removed from the site. So it's no one particular chemical, but it's generally the legacy of manufacturing.
It's all pretty routine. We see this quite a bit. Good number, maybe not all economic development, but and some social services. But again, 18 diverse projects. I know it's routine, but again, I think as Councilman Gallagher pointed out, this is an educational moment. Educational moment to realize this is the work that we do. It's good work to clean up the soil. It's a benefit to the project and those around. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, if I can.
Madam Chair.
Oh, wait, who else
Ms.
did?
Simon and then Mr. Sweeney.
I just have a specific question on the tungsten industrial site to be cleaned up and the Great Lakes Brewing Company, if you know anything about those two projects.
I do have a book.
Okay.
So, Councilwoman, if I may just very briefly at the high level describe, in the tungsten industrial project, this is a vacant manufacturing and light assembly factory site in the city of Euclid, where there were, in fact, 21 buildings that are all going to be demolished and removed and remediated. And among the things to be cleaned up are asbestos, general waste, contaminated soils, and then just the typical cleanup process to get it to a voluntary action program standard of compliance. And then, I apologize, the second one?
Great Lakes Brewery.
Great Lakes. So Great Lakes Brewery, here we have a 9-acre site that Great Lakes Brewery is redeveloping. And here we have a history of industrial operations on site with some heavy metals. The land is vacant. There are also some chemicals known as PAHs and TPH, of which I am not a chemical engineer, but that's what was indicated. And there's going to be considerable excavation of soil here and removal of 8,660 tons of contaminated soil. And then it'll be backfilled with clean soil. So basically making the land clean to the acceptable standard for reuse.
Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director, how are you?
Fine, thank you, sir.
Just with the Westinghouse project, can you tell me what they're doing there? This
The
is on
Westinghouse project as a whole is a conversion of that old building for mixed use, with the largest use being residential.
Got it. It's right on the bend by the Shoreway.
It's very, very visible, very prominent.
Very prominent, and it's the cleanup aspect, right?
Yes, it is, sir.
What's, through the chairperson, what's the status of the project itself, though, in regards to being a project that's shovel-ready?
Councilman, I'm going to ask my colleague Mike May to come forward, as he and his staff, Jan Bain, have been involved with the project. We also have a U.S. EPA loan. Mike, do you have any additional current status in Westinghouse?
Michael May, Department of Development. There
Michael.
is, hello, hi. There's going to be a demolition of one section of one of the buildings. There is a lot of asbestos removal that's taking place. There's also petroleum aspects to the property, but when all is said and done, they're going to be renovating and adaptively reusing 3 of the buildings for apartments, a hotel, and some commercial space.
Mr. May, if you could speak up into the microphone,
Sure.
please. Thank you.
It's on.
Thank you for the answer. Just my question, or what I'm pondering right now is, during the factors in awarding these,
Right.
through my chairwoman, is the doability of the project, is it going to move forward? Is that a factor in this?
Sure.
Awarding of it?
Again, the first thing to remember here is that this is all riding on, first and foremost, the Ohio Brownfield Remediation Program that
Absolutely.
granted to these. And one of the things that, formulaically, it's important to remember that the state of Ohio, in awarding those funds to various projects in this competitive process that they had, they said they would only do 75% of the total cost of the project. So the gap of 25% had to be filled, and we're taking it upon ourselves to do some of that gap filling. So I want everybody to understand that. So the funding stacks are absolutely going to be in place for these projects to go forward. As Director Hertig said, this is a whole sort of mixed bag of viability and where projects are absolutely ready, and they've got signed tenants and the like, in order to be able to, once they've cleaned up the property, and to actually be able to redevelop it. There are other projects that are doing more, basically cleaning the thing up and getting it ready and competitive for hoped for development. So that you've got that spectrum going. There is no guarantee that all these projects are going to be absolutely successful developments, but the main thing here is to get the cleanup to happen.
Yeah, and that's what through my chair, I just want to go a little bit farther here. It's just,
Sure.
the cleanup is absolutely incredible, and it's going to make this property usable.
Right.
And having the ability to move forward to its completion is a scoring factor in regards to getting this award.
Yes, and as was mentioned, we had points that were being given to.
But I just want to get to the
number
end
of
of the
jobs.
story is, I happen to be the local council person there in Cuyahoga County, but there's a local council person in the city of Cleveland. And when you talked about the stacking, that's very important.
Right.
But also support from the neighborhood community. And last time I checked, I need to go back and check again, and hopefully what you're saying is accurate. But market rate is what's being sought here, and some folks in that neighborhood think it might be saturated at market rate, and they're looking for other kind of, and so if there's a issue there, I'm just trying to figure out, when the application process was moving forward, did they know all the facts? If that makes some sense, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to get to the.
Well, first, again, just to repeat, I'm reminded, first of all, there was a public hearing for this project.
I know all about public hearings.
Right,
I'm just, you know what I'm trying to say.
Well,
So
and
I'll
again, I
check
think
with the local
you put your
council
finger on it.
person, and I'll get
The
it figured
key
out.
is the city of Cleveland for this project, and I believe that they are.
Is this, yeah, let me ask you this way, through the chair. Is the city of Cleveland fully supporting this project?
My understanding is yes.
Okay, thank you very much, and I just wanted to get through that exercise, so I appreciate that, and I'll do my homework on my end.
Okay,
Thank you,
the
Madam
other thing
Chairwoman.
I'd like to mention is that all of these are, the cleanups vis-à-vis either the brownfield program from the state or us, we're all counting on at the end of this, there will be a no further action letter that
Well, the cleanup is perfect.
emanates from the
We're gonna have a
voluntary
building no
action
matter what.
program. I don't know if everybody understands that this is all built on the State of Ohio Voluntary Action Program that certifies that projects have been cleaned up to the point where then lawsuits won't take place.
So just hold on, we understand that. And having a clean property is good, but having a clean property that's gonna move forward to turn into something.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm trying to get at. And I'm looking forward to working with you and my colleague over in the city
We'll
to
keep
see
you
if
apprised.
we can move that forward.
Mr.
Thank you,
Sweet.
Madam Chairwoman.
Mr. Sweeney, in this industry, sometimes we have to be patient. We would love for all of our projects to be done in 18 months or less. It is not what happens. Sometimes we clean these buildings up simply because it keeps vandals from pulling contaminated materials and contaminating the rest of a neighborhood. Because these are in order to preserve some buildings and keeping historic properties that have some value from being destroyed. So it is always important to remember that people need to be patient when development concepts are exhibited to them. We cannot promise, for example, what happened during COVID was that construction, rehab, and renovation costs exceeded 25% increases in many cases. When that happened, some of our projects did not make it to completion on time because there wasn't funding available to complete them, and they had to go back and find new financing sources. So please remember to be patient with our economic development projects, and where we have all the money to clean up, that's what these gentlemen have presented to us. Projects that all the remediation can be completed as it's been identified to date. And if we can get these projects cleaned up and remediated, that means less contamination in our marketplace and more properties that can get to completion with a project that we might appreciate. Mr. Schroen, did you?
Thank you.
Schroen,
Yes.
did you
Thank you,
have
Madam Chairman. Yep. You've indicated that all 18Es are going to meet the Ohio Brownfield, so that means that we're going to have a no further action letter for all 18?
The VAP is the standard, correct, Mike?
Yeah, voluntary, okay. So we're going to have a voluntary action plan with a no further action letter. Is there going to be a covenant not to sue? Okay, but you're at least going to get the voluntary action. You're going to at least get them no further action letter. And for those where necessary, or where we can get it, you're going to get the covenant not to sue.
Correct.
Okay. And as someone who received the very first no further action letter in the entire state of Ohio, I can tell you, as my counsel, as our chairwoman on this, everything doesn't move immediately upon getting that. Our site was 50 acres. It was 6 years before the food bank showed up there. But that's okay, because the site was clean, it was ready to go, but the food bank followed that. And I hope everybody heard what I said. The food bank showed up on the most contaminated site in the state of Ohio and is distributing food to thousands and thousands of people for the last 15 years in Cuyahoga County. And so,
There are no outbursts in this room.
so I'm just pointing out,
Continue outbursts, you will be removed from
I'm
this
just
room.
pointing out that that was what was done in that site.
And I also just heard, to my joy, that the Great Lakes Brewery is going to get 9 acres also of cleaned up. So that means that in 2 more years, perhaps we'll have Christmas ale coming off that 9 acres too. So another food-based product. So I'm just complimenting my colleague, Mr. Gallagher, and our council president, that every site doesn't get cleaned up to where there aren't any hot spots. There are some on every site potentially, but that's okay. We can get these things cleaned up so they can get reused, and that's the objective here. So my hat's off to all these 18. They're all not going to get no further, or covenant not to sue, but that's okay. If they all have a no further action letter, we are making significant progress towards economic development. So congratulations.
Thank you. Are there any further questions of my colleagues? Anyone who'd like to add their name and sponsorship?
I can add my name.
My name. Please add my name as well.
Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, if I may just question whether, any of the naysayers would suggest that the food bank site or these sites are, equivalent to a Chernobyl site.
Well, let's not go there.
I'm going there because Councilman Tron brought up that the food bank is serving food at the time, the most toxic site in the area. And
It's cleaned up now.
Now it's cleaned up.
Yeah,
Yep.
it can be cleaned up.
Thank you.
Yes,
for that
my
footnote.
point was, everything can be cleaned up if you spend enough money on it.
Much appreciated.
Yes, that was my-
Councilman
there was a-
Tron,
yep.
not lost on me.
Covenant not to sue.
Please put my name on this.
Ready
one
to
also.
move
I'm
forward.
I'm a Brownfield person.
I don't want to belabor it, but I was curious about the zoo, Cleveland Metro Parks. What are they cleaning, and is it to the level of residential, commercial? What?
I'm checking on the Cleveland Metro Parks. This is the Wire West property, which if you drive down to the zoo, you always pass this building called Wire West. Well, there was a Wire West aluminum foundry owned by the Wire West family. And it's basically demolishing the building, asbestos abatement in the existing building, soils, taking 4 feet of soil out. So basically just removing all that soil where the metals from the foundry are.
If there are no further questions, did you get all the sponsors' names, including mine?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to confirm the sponsorships. We have Ms. Conwell, Mr. Jones, Ms. Simon, Mr. Schron, and was there anyone else?
Please add my name.
Mr. Tuma?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to adopt and send for a second reading?
And is there a second?
Second.
This does not need to be passed under an emergency reading. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This moves forward to council. Congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stevens. At this time, we will turn the committee over to Councilman Miller, who will handle our next portion of items.
Resolution 2022-0406, authorizing an award on a purchase order to Nexum, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $709,482.35 for the purchase of Palo Alto Networks hardware, licenses, and subscription services for 4 firewalls for a period of 3 years.
So, thank you very much, Mr. President. And this and the next 2 items are items that ordinarily would have been referred to Finance and Budget, but the council president thought it would save a meeting and be most expeditious to hear them today in this committee of the whole meeting. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Janelle Green, Department of IT. So this item is for the purchase of 4 new firewalls to replace 2 legacy firewalls and 2 additional firewalls, for the disaster recovery project. This is something that was a funded project through the ARPA funds, and which are greatly needed. In terms of ensuring that we had best pricing, When we brought forward to the Finance Committee the IT catalog, this was something that was originally bid as a part of that IT catalog. The pricing within that was significantly higher than what this pricing was, approximately $300,000 more. So we did do our due diligence in order to research pricing and found that Nexum is offering the best pricing, as well as the ability to get us the equipment sooner than most of the other vendors. We appreciate this being added to the agenda today because any delays in getting this equipment, we have a 10-week delivery time. Anything delaying it after probably December 6th would probably add on several weeks, if not months, of time in order for us to receive the equipment.
So, once you receive the equipment, how long would it take for it to be installed?
I'll defer to Jeremy Mio, who is our interim deputy CTO.
Hello, Jeremy Mio, Department of IT. This is going to be a multi-phase project. One of the main portion of it is for disaster recovery. So it will be the initial phase, and then to replace our current legacy equipment up here in Cleveland. We do have consulting for implementation via another contract. So we would be using those resources. That project has the time of 6 to 8 months to complete. So once we get assuming that there's no major issues, it would be about, again, 6 to 8 months, hopefully sooner. We are already starting getting staff trained up in different areas of some of the newer equipment, so we can hit the ground running when we get all the equipment in. And there's a bunch of other equipment that is, this is only a portion of equipment, some which we already started ordering back in June as well.
Questions by my colleagues? So, hearing none, if all goes well, we're gonna do even better than December 6th. The council president has tentatively placed this on the agenda for final passage at tonight's council meeting if it's referred out of committee. So I would ask if someone would like to make a motion.
I
for
make a
second
motion
reading
that this be moved
suspension.
on.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to favorably refer Resolution 2022-0406 to the full council for second reading, suspension, passage at tonight's council meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it and the resolution is referred.
Resolution 2022-0407, authorizing an amendment to a contract with Microsoft Corporation for Microsoft Premier Training and Support Services for the period November 1st, 2017 through December 5th, 2022, to extend the time period to December 5th, 2023, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $685,267.
Janelle Green, Department of IT. This is Premier Support with Microsoft, which is something that we procure annually to support our enterprise licensing agreement. If you recall, we've brought that forward a couple of times to council. It's an annual cost of about $2.9 million. This support contract allows us to get training and other support services directly through Microsoft. And the pricing directly correlates with the pricing of the enterprise license agreement, which is usually around about 17% of the value of the ELA. This year is a little bit increased to around 22% to account for inflation, but to also account for the added on developer support. We did procure some developer licenses that some of our divisions are using to build some applications that are being in use in the county. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this item.
Are there any questions from my colleagues?
Actually, I move that we pass approval.
And are you moving for second reading suspension?
Yes, please.
Okay. So,
And there was a second by Councilwoman Turner.
So it's been moved and seconded to favorably refer Resolution 2022-0407 to the full council for passage tonight on second reading suspension, and it is so tentatively scheduled in the agenda for tonight's meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the resolution is favorably referred.
Thank you.
Resolution 2022-0411, making an award on requisition 9575 to Alliant Insurance Services, Inc., in the amount not to exceed $4,648,940 for insurance brokerage and risk management services for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2025.
So I would bring to my colleagues' attention that there is a proposed substitute on this piece of legislation. So as you're making your presentation, if you could also describe the substitute and what it does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg Huth, Law Director. Awada Fasad here is the Deputy Director of the Department for Risk Management. So she's been running this project for the last 2 years, about right now. And I thought virtually we would have a couple of folks from Alliant. We were going to have Justin Swarbick, he's a Senior VP at Alliant, and Sean Story, who's a VP at Alliant. Well, I'll just go ahead and charge forward. First of all, the proposed substitute corrects the dates in here. The contract that we're asking for approval for is for 2 years, but the dates were set for the end of 2025 for some reason. So that's all that the proposed substitute does.
Mr. Huth, if you could speak louder into the microphone, please.
So the proposed substitute just fixes the dates correctly for a 2-year contract. I think many of you know the Risk Management Department in law manages the process of acquiring insurance for all the different risks that the county is trying to manage. For the last several years, Highlands has been our broker of record. Their contract ends this year, 12/31/2022. So starting back in May of this year, Awada put together an RFP to just kind of gather the interest out there for this. And after going through that process and scoring all of the proposals, we selected Alliant. They're a national organization. They're currently the broker of record for the state of Ohio and Montgomery County here in Ohio. We really like the way they've been working with us and the way they put together the contract because, for one thing now, their fee is called out as a separate item in the contract. In the past, it had always been kind of baked into the different premiums that we're paying. So it's a little more transparent as far as we're concerned as to what they're providing for us. You have a...
Mr. Huth?
Yes.
The participants who are participating via Zoom are available if you need them.
Can you just bring them up on the screen, and then if there's questions, they can cover for us? You have a spreadsheet in front of you that looks something like this, and that lays out all the different policies that we purchase over the year, and it shows the total estimates for what the premiums are going to be for the next 2 years. And I stress that word estimate because the insurance market is kind of a moving thing, right? And you see that some of these policies end at the end of next year, some of them end in the middle of next year. I think Councilman Miller may remember that we had to come back early in this year and ask for some more money in the Highland contract because the insurance values had changed and we had to pump some more money into some of these premiums. Our budget for 2023 that we had presented about a year ago for this contract was a little short by about $500,000. The big reason for that is that as we were going through this process, WADF discovered that we hadn't had our own real property appraised for about 15 years. So we got an appraiser in here that's very experienced with public property, had him go through all of our real property assets, and it turns out the values increased about $800 million. So frankly, we really expected the premiums to go up a lot more, but they've only gone up about $500,000. So the legislation in front of you would authorize us to enter into a contract with Alliant for 2 years. It covers the 2-year totals that you see on the spreadsheet, plus their fee, which is going to be a total $230,000 for 2 years, $115,000 each year. And then we put a little extra in the contract this year, $100,000, just so we don't have to come back in case the premiums do come up. But it would be a 2-year contract to get us through the end of 23. And then there's always optional 1-year extensions in that contract. There'd be 2 of them, but we would have to come back here for more money if we tried to extend it, if we needed to extend it or wanted to extend it. So with that, I ask for your approval.
Director, can you tell us how much money we saved when we transferred the property to Metro Health last year?
But Awata Fasad, Deputy Director of Risk Management. We don't have the exact figures, but whatever their premium was, that is our savings. And we were paying close to $700,000 annually. So
And
it's probably much more than that.
with these increases in value, it's more than that.
Possibly, yes.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Stevens.
So, fact sometimes follows fiction. The cyber liability and excess cyber liability sections are of interest to me simply because in the lending and construction industries, which we are involved in, there are folks who sometimes hack into our systems and say, oh, development department, instead of sending $1 million to this operating account at Huntington, send it to this operating account at Capital. It looks like the right parties. The money goes off. Then somebody above that person in the food chain or below that person in the food chain goes, when did that account change? Oh, I got this email. Well, that's not Cheryl Stevens. That says Carol Stevens. Oops. Our bad. How are we protected with these accounts, with these policies? Is there a ceiling? Is there a floor?
I will let either Jeremy or Justin or Shane respond to that if they can. Because we work closely with Jeremy in making sure that we had the right coverages for things like this.
And the city of Akron, 2 or 3 years ago, was zapped by one of these folks, and they held the system hostage. So this is happening regular.
Yeah. Jeremy, you want to help us out here?
Yeah. From a really high level, we're seeing this across the country.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I apologize. Justin Swarbrick with Alliant Insurance Services. But as I was saying, we have seen this across the country.
It happened to me just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most common crime/cyber type claims that we do see. Cyber liability carriers do provide coverage for this. It is a minimal limit, to be honest. Crime carriers also provide coverage for this at a minimal limit as well. And those are two coverages that we would be placing on behalf of the county.
So, if I'm reading this chart correctly, the limit is $3 million?
That is the cyber liability limit currently. Shane may be pulling up that policy right now to see if there's a sublimit for this specific coverage that you're talking about, which is basically a funds transfer fraud exposure. Typically, we do see it sublimited, but there would be some coverage on that cyber liability policy, correct?
Greg, do you know who discussed this? Because some of our loans disperse upon completion, and we'll have disbursements larger than $3 million because they used their bank or construction financing and then came to us.
Well, the discussion occurred between the two folks, virtually Jeremy and Awata, to put this together. But I will say that most often, and it is cumbersome sometimes, but most often we do checks.
Okay. They can be stolen too. They're not protected under this.
Right.
Okay.
Jeremy Meal, Department of IT, Information Security Officer. We have various anti-fraud techniques going through cyber liability or cyber insurance reviews. We have to be insurable. So we have to meet minimum baselines from a detection and defense. So think about it like car insurance. You still have to be a defensive driver. You still have to have a license. You still have to not have a lot of traffic tickets and things like that unless you get your registration blocked. Similar things within the cyber insurance area. It is very difficult, even as a municipality or county, state, to even obtain cyber insurance today. So the specific limits, as they may seem small comparatively to a billion-dollar organization such as the county, they are looked at from a risk perspective on their specific occurrences as well as potential impact. When we do any type of vendor contracts, we also require our vendors to have cyber insurance. So in that review, even though it seems like a low amount, it is a proper amount for us. In the worst case scenario where we would hit our ceiling, just like anything like a house insurance or anything, we have other reserve funds and have other types of money to dip into, and that's how a lot of cities and counties and states, from a self-insurance perspective, have to operate just in case there's any type of large disaster.
Okay.
I don't know if that really answered your specific
Well,
question, but just
it's
overall.
something that we all hate.
Yeah.
That somebody can change 2 letters on your name and somebody reading quickly, which we all are busy and we tend to do. And so, Cheryl authorized that.
We do spend a lot of investment in our cybersecurity protections and like to invest into those items more than attempt to get $10 million, $50 million of insurance, because then our premiums are going to be paying millions of dollars of premiums that go essentially nowhere other than the potential to use, in any type of instance. And we
So
haven't
one of the-
had one like that I'm aware of at the county directly.
What, you haven't had somebody try to steal 900 or $1 million from you yet?
Not successfully.
Well, okay.
That's why we.
Because I'm getting them and I'm a much smaller agency.
Of it is a balancing, what are the risks, and we evaluate that and the cost of like insurance premiums. And we know that Jeremy Mio, I've worked with him for about 3 years, has done a phenomenal job protecting the county and with his security, IT security strategies. So that's why we're very confident with the limits that we have in the insurance policies that we're purchasing. So that does come into play.
Has been in the network that I operate in is continuous training for the people who have signature and transfer authority. So are we doing that? I don't want to know exactly what it is, because of course this is a public meeting, but do we have continuous training for the people with signature and transfer authority?
We do have continuous training. We do have increased training for specific areas for people that handle sensitive information, such as credit card information. To know about all of signature capabilities, we definitely we review with fiscal and the Treasury Department. It is part of the anti-fraud section of the cyber liability insurance requirements when we fill out that application, to review with the Treasury Department within the fiscal office to make sure that the proper items are in place, as well as when certain mechanisms are in place for wires and certain things like that.
So my favorite guinea pig is the development director. How often does he get an email testing him or asking him to be trained?
Development director themselves, probably at least quarterly, if not more often. I'd have to go into our system. We do this for.
He's spending money every day on our collective behalf.
And he, as well as many others, are. So at a minimum, the entire county does get tested quarterly. Some of them, including privileged individuals that have privileged access in the IT department, get tested weekly and biweekly.
All we can do is try and protect ourselves, which is all my questions were about. Are we doing our best to protect us?
We can always be doing more, and we will continuously improve.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Ms. Conwell's next.
Yes, to the chair.
This way.
That's okay. I'm quick, Shrine.
No,
Have we always used
looking at.
Alliant Insurance
Councilman, they've been our broker of record for the last 4 years.
for the last 4? Okay. And how many times, and this may have been asked already, have we placed a claim for any type of these services, or have we have it.
Regularly, we have different property things that come up and vehicle issues, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Strawn.
And to my colleague who is commenting about the size of the limit is fairly low, and I get that on the cyber, but the mere fact that they will write that policy for us is an acclamation or a recognizing that we're doing a lot of the right things, because there are a lot of people, a lot of insurance companies are not even writing cyber insurance coverage for a lot of smaller risks and things of that nature. So I think that, though I wish the number was bigger, it does at least say that they have looked at us, they've done their due diligence, and they're willing to write. Last time I checked, 3 million was still 3 million. It's not as good as it would be if it was 5 to 10, but I get it. But by the same token, it says that they've looked at our policies and programs and given us at least the credibility to say we're doing a lot of the right things in this area. So my hat's off in being able to get the policy written. Go see if you can get any more. But anyway, thanks. When you stack the two together, it's 5. Right.
I was just going to say, Ms. Osad, if you could step to the microphone. We didn't hear what you asked, what your statement was.
That's okay. It's 3 and 2 because there's an excess. If you look at the line below it, there's an excess of 2 on there. You stack the 2 together, it gets to 5.
Thank you.
Other questions by my colleagues? So, seeing none, I would first ask if I can have a motion to accept the substitute and get the dates properly aligned for the 2-year contract.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the substitute to provide the proper dates for a 2-year contract. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The substitute is accepted. And there is sufficient time for 3 readings on this item, and it has so been tentatively scheduled by the council president for tonight and the December 6th meeting. So I would like to ask if there is a motion to favorably refer Resolution 2022-0411 as substituted on its merits to the full council for second reading.
Make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second, Sharon.
Okay, it's been moved by Tooman, seconded by Schwan to move this resolution to the full council for second reading. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. And it is so recommended.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. President.
Resolution 2022-0401, adopting the 2022-2023 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program annual update for 2023.
So this is the budget update, and first I would bring my colleagues up to date on that. We were intending to hear the presentation today on the Metro Health budget, but because of events that I'm sure all of you have heard about, that they have asked to postpone that to a later time, so we're going to accommodate that request. My only comment is that Akron Boutros did a whole lot for the Metro Health system, and it's just very sorry to see it end this way. So with that, there are no further presentations for the budget update, and we come to the discussion of amendments. And I would like to put forward 2 amendments, and both of the amendments have been approved by both the council president and Director Parfiowicz. And the first one relates to the Monument Commission, and I'm going to ask Joe Nani to come forward and to explain the amendment.
Good afternoon, council members. As a reminder, the Monument Commission was established by council in 2013. The commission is charged with appropriate memorialization of significant persons, communities, and historic events through public monuments. Since we first convened, I'm a member of the commission. We have approved the Perry Jackson statue, adopted bylaws, adopted formal monument application process, elected officers, mapped known monuments, approved a retention schedule, and researched comparable commissions. Additionally, the commission has partnered with the Cuyahoga Department of Public Works to develop an initial inventory and assessment of all county-owned monuments. It's important to note that this work has been accomplished through the dedication of time and expertise by members of the commission with neither a budget or a dedicated staff. As a representative of the Monument Commission, we're requesting an allocation to the Department of Public Works to continue this work. Specifically, the Monument Commission supports an allocation of $95,000 for the completion of a detailed assessment of the condition of the Cuyahoga County monuments, and a maintenance plan for those monuments. This work is critical to the mission of the Monument Commission and will provide the Department of Public Works the needed resources for ongoing maintenance of existing county-owned monuments. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councilman Tweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chief of Staff. Just on the Monument Commission itself, being a member of the appointing committee, having the gentleman, I think it was two gentlemen and a lady that came up and testified, this is manna from heaven for them. They've been asking for it to be able to answer the questions, how many we have, what kind of shape they're in.
Correct.
And just to my colleagues, this is something that they have been waiting for, and they're going to put it to great use. And just think about it. We have a storied history here. We really can't tell the story, but with these funds, the story will be there for everybody. And they're talking about putting it online and all this stuff. It was pretty cool listening to them, and seeing it here today is exciting for me.
Yes, the work that's been done so far is actually pretty great relative to the actual inventory that we have for the known monuments that we have. And you'd be surprised at the type of monuments that we do have in all county buildings and properties throughout the county, and the level of maintenance that they require.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion about the monuments? Okay, so procedurally, what I'm going to suggest is that at today's meeting, we will vote on informal motions that amend the resolution. And I expect that at our third reading on December 6th that we're probably going to want to pass a more formal amendment that actually amends the items into the schedules and the legislation. So with that, I would ask if we have a motion to amend Resolution 2022-0401 to add $95,000 to the Public Works Department for the purpose of the Monument Commission study.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amendment is adopted. And I will present the second amendment. Yes, Ms. Simon?
Mr. Chair, just one question of Chief of Staff Nani. Do you have any updates on Florence Allen over at the old courthouse? And we're working on that.
Not through the Monument Commission, but I can talk sidebar. I have heard that there's been a specific space allocated to that. Technically, we reviewed that it's not really a monument as much as it's a memorial to the Florence Allen.
Yeah, we set up the space
Yes,
before COVID.
But yeah, I'll
but
have
I haven't
to get
heard.
back to you. But the important point, that does not have to go through the commission for
Gotcha.
approval. That's really a separate item, but I can
Okay.
get an update for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to present the second amendment, and the second amendment relates to the sheriff's office. And as the sheriff's office is currently budgeted, it does not include any money for overtime. And this is in spite of the fact that there's just under $7 million of overtime expenses that's hardwired into the collective bargaining agreements. The collective bargaining agreements provide 8 hours per pay period of overtime. So we have that as a minimum, and this year the total overtime expense is expected to be about 16 million. However, it can be done for less if the department is successful in doing good recruitment and retention and operating near its targeted staffing levels. Then you don't need as much overtime. But the purpose of a budget is to anticipate reasonably necessary expenses, and we should have a number in the budget for overtime, and the number that I'm recommending is 10 million. This covers the 7 million plus some additional. It's kind of a best case scenario, but it gets us a lot closer to what our actual expenses will be. So the proposal is to add $10 million to the personnel line item in the sheriff's office for the purpose of anticipated overtime expenses in 2023. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues? Hearing none, is there a motion to add the 10 million for the sheriff's office?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to add the amendment to the resolution. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I didn't get the second.
Sweeney.
And the first? Thank you.
Okay, hearing no further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. The amendment is adopted. Is there any further discussion about the 2023 budget update? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to refer Resolution 2022-0401, the 2023 budget update, to the full council as amended for second reading.
So moved. Conwell.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? The motion is to favorably recommend the budget update, Resolution 2022-0401, to the full council for second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. The ayes have it. The resolution is so referred. And I believe I now turn over the leadership to whoever will handle the final item.
All right, thank you, Councilman Miller. At this time, we will address the ordinance to establish a Justice Center Capital Projects Fund. Madam Clerk, would you read the item into the record?
Ordinance 2022-0007, enacting Chapter 703 of the County Code, establishing a Justice Center Capital Projects Fund in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.13.
We will have Trevor McAleer give us a brief presentation.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, County Council members. Trevor McAleer, County Council staff. Before you today is Ordinance 2022-007, which creates the Justice Center Capital Project Fund. This has been discussed in prior council committee meetings. Originally, the intent of this fund was to deposit the 0.25% sales tax that was also on the agenda in prior Committee of the Whole meetings beginning in 2028, and that revenue was going to be deposited into this fund. Before you today is a proposed substitute that removes that language from the ordinance and adds additional language that would transfer approximately $53,609,000 into this fund. It still establishes the fund, but moves that amount from the general fund ARPA dollars made available through revenue loss that was originally set aside for 2023-2024 capital project, 2023-2024 projects for the incoming executive. And this, the proposed substitute will take that amount and deposit it into this fund. Take any questions if council members have any.
Questions? Councilwoman?
Through the chair to Mr. McAleer, will it need to be, since it's ARPA dollars, do they need to be spent by 2024, or does this take care of that?
No, Councilwoman, because the council and the executive credited all the ARPA dollars to revenue loss, it's all currently sitting in the general fund right now. So any timetable of these dollars needing to be spent is no longer valid because it's all considered general fund now.
Is that the same for the individual dollars that each district has?
Yeah, that holds true for all 240 million.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Councilman Miller?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to direct a question to Director Parfiowitz as to whether the administration supports this legislation.
Councilman Miller, at this point, I haven't really discussed this with anyone, but it remains in the general fund where it is now. I suppose we just add another zone within the general fund and segregate this? I mean, it can be done fairly simply.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. President, I have some comments about this legislation. I'm one that feels that we should build a new jail sooner rather than later. This legislation does not advance that goal. To do so would require a high level of cooperation between the council and the next executive. This legislation is a slap in the face and gets us started off on the wrong foot right out of the gate. And I just don't think that it's a good thing to do. Second, I don't support creating a special fund for this purpose. Those who have one priority over all others often seek to create lockboxes to prevent funds from being spent for other purposes. But it's bad budgeting. Yes, the jail is very important, but so is economic development, human services, early childhood education, environmental improvement, housing, and many other things. We should maintain flexibility to allocate funds among competing goals. The 2023 ARPA money isn't going to be spent anytime soon, and none of it can be spent without council approval. There is no need to create a special fund at this time. And Mr. President, I respectfully request that this item be held in committee for further consideration and not be moved forward today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. Councilman Schron?
I agree with my colleague, Councilman Miller. Is there a timing where this could this be done in 3 months, 6 months, any different than what we're talking about doing today?
Councilman, there is currently no legally time limits on the fund.
The likelihood of a jail or any commitment in the next 3 months or 6 months is probably between slim and none. So I don't know, I don't understand the rush to get this done. This body, I think we all agreed that there would be 3 buckets of money, one which was going to be within our 11 council districts, one which was going to be going to the existing county council, our county executive, and one which was going to go to an unknown person that we did not have on record as to who that might be. We do now know. And I think that the new county council or county executive-elect has voiced, I believe, an opinion on this. Have you heard any of his opinion on regards to this?
I have not heard opinion. I believe it's quoted in the story from last week, but I have not
Okay,
talked to him
and what was
specifically.
that the story? Do you recall what his attitude was in regards to that?
I'd have to go look at that again.
Okay, I think he was disappointed in that. I'm not speaking for him, but I'm just reiterating the report. And so I too do not see any advantage for us to move forward with this in regards to it. And I respectfully request, as my council, that this be held. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President?
Councilwoman Simon.
Thank you so much. For those of us who do truly believe and did believe this was a priority project in a jail that needed to be built sooner than later, we had a plan in place. We had a plan for a funding source. We had a plan for real estate, property site. We had plans to build a humane jail. That plan was thwarted and undermined in part by those who claim that it should be built sooner than later. This is a priority of this council of over 3 years. This council, specifically the Justice Affairs and Safety Committee, studied, discussed, debated, analyzed, and ultimately concluded that we need to build a new jail. A jail which is humane and a jail that will be a place where we can ensure to some degree that our inmates will be safe. The new jail became a high priority, not only of this council, but of the executive, as a core function of our county government. This is the center of what we do and should do. Despite the project being inexplicitly derailed by a small group of individuals, this council continues to understand that building a jail remains a paramount important function that we need to proceed with. There must be a funding source. There must be money available and capital funds available to pursue from scratch now consultants, property searches, property acquisition. And when I hear that we have time to wait, we really don't have time to wait. Every day that goes by puts at risk the inmates at our jail. It puts at risk that we cannot accommodate all the COs we need because we have 8 stories that cannot be filled with COs. So we need to move fast. We need to provide the new executive with the means to do that. And to sit back and continue to wait is irresponsible, in no disrespect to my colleagues. But this is something we need to move forward with. This money will be available so the new executive can hit the ground running. Without it, it's not going to happen. So this is guarantee, and as council president said, is good government. And I'm hoping that this will proceed with a yes vote and to provide the new executive with the means to do this and as quickly as possible. We've wasted so much time with false accusations, with pushback over years of hard work, and I think this council needs to move forward despite that pushback. Thank you.
Mr. President? Let's go down the line, starting with Councilman Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remind my colleagues that when we didn't get that legal opinion in July that was withheld for what reason, I still don't know, telling us all about the jail, that we already knew. 3 years of work, we already knew it, but somehow blindly we had to go out and get another opinion. Well, we saw what that opinion was, and since that day, and I'll only go back to July, I like to go back to 18 months ago when we were ready to go in a jail. I only go back to July. That's $15 million to today that's been added to the cost of a jail. December will bring us to $18 million. There are people out here that don't get it. Sadly, some of my colleagues, I don't think, get it. It's real money. It's going to hurt the taxpayer because in the end, they're going to pay triple that. That's only going back to July. If we go back to day one, when we didn't, had we not played the game of tag of who's going to get what and what's going to get who, we're at 72 million. $72 million down the drain without a shovel in the ground. Now, my math gives me $87 million today. 90 next month of wasted dollars on the jail itself. 90 million. What are we talking about here? 53? This isn't personal, this is business. People need to realize what real money looks like. And if you want to play politics and make statements, I get it. We're all in politics, we all get it. But there comes a reckoning. And the reckoning is January 1. I know, I hope the rest of you understand that January 1, yes, we're not going to move forward because nobody's ready. It's been balled up and thrown in the garbage by the incoming executive and some other individuals. And we thought, okay, you're going to have to show us what you're going to do. What do we know? We know we're down $90 million from 3 years ago. We know that statements were made by both candidates for executive. They wanted to go to the public for a funding source. I know, and I don't want this getting out, that's dead on arrival. DOA in these times is dead on arrival. Now what do? We're now months down the path, $3 million a month. I'll let you do your own figuring and calculation on that because of a political promise to throw it all away. That's fine. Now the bill is due. If we don't do this, if we do not do this, Councilwoman Simon's right. They're going to ignore it. It's going to be too hard to do. And in January of 24, when a new jail would have been opened, we are going to have problems. We are going to have disasters. We are going to have unfortunate events where people's lives are at stake, and we're going to get sued. So let's add that. And I'm not saying a new jail doesn't immunize you from all of those issues, but what it would have given us a solid background to go tell any court, look what we're doing. We can't do that anymore. It's impossible because we were told everything you're doing, we're going to throw in the trash and do it better. Well, I welcome the better to show up January 1st, like I said. There will be no roses on the desk. There will be a bill for $1 billion. And I remind my colleagues, 1 billion is the number. I see the paper likes to say 700 million. The reality was, when the vote of no came through from that committee, who had no legal authority and still has no legal authority, the bill really was 800 million. Don't let that out. Don't tell anybody. Shh, 800 million, but don't say 700. Why are they doing that? Because $1 billion gets people's attention. And guess what? It's not going to be $1 billion. It's going to be more. Unless, of course, somebody starts peeling out the things that committee demanded be in a new jail. Unanimously, 12-0, we want 300 beds for medical and psychological services. We want to expand the medical in the jail. We want to provide better atmosphere for those not just that are guests there, but our employees. It's the only way they're going to save money and get it back down to the 800 million. They won't. They'll try, but I'm promising anybody that does that I'm sure this council will look at that with a cocked eye. So if we don't do this, you're yet again turning your back on a reality of life. We don't need to redo a jail. We can't redo either one of those jails. To bisect or bifurcate 2 jails in downtown Cleveland creates double the cost. We can go on, I can go on, because I know the answers to just about every question regarding the jail. And that makes me sick, because that tells me I wasted 3 years of my life trying to do the right thing. And regardless, here we are with an opportunity to put money forward to light a fire under anybody who's necessarily in a position of importance that said they were going to get it done better and cheaper. I heard those too. Well, good luck, because you're going to need this $53 million. And like I said, next month, 3 years, $90 million. $90 million. You guys want to go to your next election telling your constituents that, oh, I peed away $90 million of your dollars for politics? To look good? To appease a newspaper? I see the walk back has already started with many of those people. As predicted. As predictable. This is a serious situation, and it's about damn time we make sure that everybody coming in here that really hasn't spent 3 years doing this understands the seriousness. You vote no on this, God bless you. I hope you can sleep at night. I'm going to vote yes on this because it's necessary, it's important, and in a strange and odd way, the new executive will be far further ahead with the availability of those dollars for a direct investment in a new jail and potential courthouse situation. I understand a deal's a deal, but in the world in which we're in, a deal's a deal until it isn't a deal. And that deal got taken off the board last year, or this past year, months ago. We're in a whole new world. We're in a whole new atmosphere. And there are things happening in that jail we all know about. We've read about them. We've experienced them. Many of us have gone over there and witnessed them. It's not getting better. It has to be replaced. Games were played. Game over. Let's move forward. And I don't care if people don't like it. I don't like the fact that people are in the crosshairs of horribleness in that jail. Nobody disputes that. Nobody disputes that. So I'd like to hear why anybody would dispute dedicating these dollars to the number one issue facing Cuyahoga County going forward into the future. Not just the new future, the future. This is a 50-year project, and it is necessary to do. So I highly recommend my colleagues stop the games, put the money where it needs to go. Nobody's going to argue this. Nobody's going to argue it. I don't see the argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to my colleagues, Simon and Gallagher. So, you know, Councilman Miller, I understand we have a difference of opinion on this, and that's a very real difference. We did take our $66 million in discretionary funding, and we did put it towards infrastructure projects, economic development projects, health and human service projects, and we were still completely vilified unnecessarily and unfortunately, because what county council did, again, were transformational projects to help infrastructure, economic development, and services for individuals struggling in Cuyahoga County. And we were still attacked. So allowing these funds to go towards the jail, actually, I think it's going to be helping the new county executive. I'm here to help the new county executive. I'm here to work with the new county executive. And I don't know how anybody can be upset about getting $53 million towards a project I mean, this is a good thing. This is a good thing for the new county executive. The new incoming county executive didn't like what we did for 3 years. You know, he had all that information from Cleveland.com that was, pushing an agenda. And so now you'll get to come in here, look at the facts, look at all the information that we've been dealing with for the past 3 years. And maybe you'll be able to look at this $53 million and say, that's actually a very good thing that county council is doing for me. And I appreciate that. So when that day happens, I'll be very pleased that we're working together towards this important project. Having done this for such a long time, to put money off, there is no plan on the table now. So we're talking about the urgency of having to get this jail done. There is no plan in place right now. The plan that we had, the rules of engagement that we had, they're all off the table, as Councilman Gallagher said. These were funds that Council President Jones and Executive Budish came to an agreement on, asked Council's opinion on. We got gave them our opinion, said, hey, this is how we want to do it. Three different pots here. And, the game has changed. The rules have changed. There's a more pressing need to use these funds to get this jail started and completed because, as Councilman Gallagher said and Councilwoman Simon has said, these costs are increasing exponentially by the day. The dangers that lurk in the current jail increase by the day. And there needs to be a sense of urgency here. And I'm hoping that knowing that there's a pot of $53 million sitting there for a particular project on January 1st is going to create a sense of urgency in the new executive. So I'm supporting this legislation. I appreciate my colleagues bringing this forward, Council President bringing it forward. And if you're opposed to it, you better have a better plan because there's no better plan right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Trevor, thank you for your patience. There's an extreme urgency to the new jail. But my question is, how are we going to handle the current jail? Through the chairs, are these funds available, not committed to? Could they be used for figuring out what we're going to do in the meantime at the current jail until we get to this thing resolved?
Yes, Councilman, if there was a decision to upgrade certain things or whatever in the current jail, the current legislation would allow for some of this money or for the money to be used. Our Public Works Director has been asked by the Council President to come up with a list of immediate needs that he would recommend. We're waiting on receiving that. So that, yes, that is an option.
And through my president, I see the sheriff here. He's our leader. I just want to know how much money that he needs from our subject matter expert. How much does he need to be able to get the jail in a form that is manageable while we move this new jail forward? So, to the president, thank you for letting me ask the opportunity. If those funds are available to take care of what the sheriff needs until we get to this moment of how we're going to make the new jail and where it's going to be, and immediate focus needs to be on that. Now, the immediate focus needs to be there, but a significant focus needs to be on what we're doing. So thank you, Trevor, for letting me have that opportunity to understand that, and I'm going to be focused on giving the sheriff the things he needs and work with everybody and figure out how we're going forward. So thank you for listening to my little soapbox there, but it's important to me.
Councilman Tron.
Trevor, does anything stop, assuming that this does not go through, does anything stop the new county executive from doing this exact same thing on January 1st?
Councilman, in terms of using these dollars
he could choose to move them into this exact same account that you're talking about. If he
would have to bring forward legislation.
Yeah, so he would have, but my question was very simple. We all talked about January 1st. I heard of that. Would anything stop him from doing this January 1st?
Only council.
Yep. So he submitted legislation. We would go through the same conversation we're having right today. And the difference is he would be the one submitting this as opposed to us submitting it at that point in time. So I want it real clear. I am not playing any games. I don't worry about the media. I don't care what they write about us. We're all big adults here. A deal is a deal until it's not a deal. That is not Jack Schron. I'm sorry. I will be able to sleep at night because when I give my word and I live by that word, as this body did, I'll be able to sleep. If the county council, new county executive wants to make that decision, I will be supporting that if he wants to, but I'll be able to sleep at night with my no decision tonight.
Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Councilman Ron. Are there any other questions?
Mr. President.
Councilman Miller?
I just want to say that it's not about forcing somebody to do something. It's about people working together. I actually think it would be a good thing if the next county executive chose to use a portion and perhaps a substantial portion of this money for the jail project. But as I said, the jail, important as it is, it's not the only challenge that the county faces. And I believe that the county executive should have the opportunity to work with us and weigh in on this. We're not going to move anything by trying to force his hand. I mean, people don't respond to force. What we need is a working relationship. And there's just no reason why we have to move on this today. We should just wait for the county executive and work with him, and he has just as much access to this money. If we don't have to put it in a lockbox for him to have access to this money and be able to use it to move the jail project forward. So that's
Thank
my
you,
view.
Councilman
Mr. President.
Miller. Thank you, Councilman Miller. Councilman Gallagher, and then Councilwoman Simon, and then if anyone who has not had an opportunity to speak, if you desire.
Thank you. And I agree with Mr. Miller. You got to work together. Not until January 1st will a new executive be seated. So as far as I'm concerned, we're working together. This council didn't change the playing field. We responded to force. We responded to threats. And in the end, we said, you know what? If you think you can do it better, then we'll see you January 1st, whomever you are, because both candidates pretty much said they were going to do the same thing. So we didn't threaten the council that we're going to ball it up and throw it in the garbage January 1st. We didn't threaten that. Doesn't sound like a collaboration to me. We didn't threaten lawsuits. Doesn't sound like working together to me. This is us doing our job. And I would say that there's a healthy reserve, as we well know, and we got to be careful with it. But if the new executive will have access to that through us to do whatever he deems necessary. And in that instance, certainly we'll work together. This council has done nothing regarding this jail other than bend over backwards, grab our ankles, and try and get along. We've been threatened with lawsuits. We've been threatened with no matter what you do, we're going to throw it in the garbage. We're the ones being threatened. And let's be clear, this isn't retaliatory. These people coming in are really freshmen. They don't know what they're facing. I know what they're facing. There's access to other monies if necessary. These are necessary funds for the most necessary of projects. And yes, Mr. Schron, a deal's a deal until it isn't a deal. Until it isn't a deal, when I didn't change the deal, Council didn't change the deal. The footing that we're on now is completely different. Completely different. So I want to make that very clear. Working with the new executive and his team is paramount. But he has access to other funds if necessary. And this council, I am positive, would look upon any of his requests like we've looked upon the requests of the past two executives. If anything this council has done is bend over and acquiesce to everybody. Our partners come in here and ask for more money. I can't think of a time we said no. I can't think of a time. So we work with everybody. So lest you not be concerned that this is in some fashion retaliatory, I'm trying to get a job done. I'm trying to put money where it's necessary to go. And you know what? I don't sleep at night because all those deaths in that jail, and I go back to the summer in my backyard and I got the call on a Friday when a guy died. I still remember that. I still remember that. It burns in my memory, burns in my heart. And to ball it up and throw it away and do it all over again, okay. Here's a path forward. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Simon.
Thank you so much. Let's not forget that this body's our institutional body. We have the institutional knowledge from the past 11 years of this new county council, this new government. We know what's needed. We've been embedded, have been involved with, have interacted with all the departments, and have concluded after all these years what we need, what's a priority, what's important to protect the guests in our care. We need to be the leaders. Executives come and go, we've seen, we'll be on our third one, but the consistency from which we need to work comes from this body. And I'm gonna lead on the priority that we have set forth despite who sits at that desk. And I can tell you there was no deal made. I made no deal with this incoming executive or any other person about ARPA dollars. How can you make a deal with somebody who's not even sworn in or elected in an office? So let's get that straight. I made a projection of what could be available to an executive, understanding that we had a plan to fund a jail, that we were going to take a hit, again from Cleveland.com, to extend the sales tax, to do the right thing, so that an incoming executive could proceed with his initiatives, and we would have had this covered. But guess what? The rug was pulled out from all of us with a threat, as Councilman Gallagher states, a public threat, a public rebuke from somebody who has no knowledge other than maybe to watch our stream. Because I, for one, have never sat down with either candidate to go through and despite an invitation, to talk about the importance of the jail, to talk about the timing of the jail, to talk about the cost. Every day that goes by, one of the legs of that table would have been broken off each month if we didn't proceed on a calendar to make sure this would happen. So I want to state there was no commitment from this council person. There was a projection, and that changed because of a public threat. So that being said, I want to respond to Councilman Sweeney's question, which thank you so much. It was anticipated in this fund that we would have to have money available now to maintain this jail as humanely as we can, as safely as we can, because now the timeline to have to do this has been extended for unforeseen years. We had a number before, perhaps to 2024, what we needed to do to maintain it. We don't know now. So this money, this pot of money, which I fully support, will make sure that those repairs can be made in the meantime, however long this is going to be. And I originally am the sponsor of this legislation, so we would make sure that the courts would have a fund. That was important because there was some trepidation from the courts, from the judges. What will happen if all the sales tax money is spent on the jail? And to be fair and equitable, knowing we had a capital project coming down the pipe, I thought it was important that we put aside funds to make sure that that happened. It's responsible governance to set aside capital funding for projects we know need to happen. So I believe in this way to segregate money, but now it has to, the majority of it needs to go to the jail. So I thank the president and my colleagues for considering this long road, and this is where we've landed, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Let me say this. One, I hear you, each and every one of you, each and one of my colleagues. I respect and value each and every one of you, your thoughts and your opinions. And I know we have invested 4 years and $6.5 million at least into the due diligence we've done to arrive to the decisions that we had come to. And that is lost. That is lost. And so I feel your pain. I understand and I'm a part of it. But I don't lose sight of the fact that we still, and you have not lost sight of the fact that we do need a facility. We need a more humane facility. And that is still, and it must remain on the table and in front of each and every one of us of both branches of government, both executive and the legislative branch. We have had our studies that have told us that it's time to replace this facility. We've had a most recent study financed by our prosecutor and our chief administrative judge who have told us that this building needs replacing. The major work that would be required, simple things like, I won't call them simple, like handicap accessibility that was not available, required 50 years ago. So many things. I can only compare it to having an old car and then the mechanic saying to you to repair all of these things, what the cost would be, and you simply say to yourself, well, I can get a new car for that. That's literally where we are with that building. And they have told us we have 5 to 8 years left of life, functional life with this building. So that is the time frame that we are operating within. And we need to be able to, whatever the decisions will be, they need to be, we need to continue to move forward. And we are taking a step right now in that direction. We have heard, today we have heard everything about environmental, things that we do routinely, that were major concerns during our deliberations. Again, I don't know that there's farmland in downtown Cleveland, 30 to 40 acres of unremediated soil that is just clean. We don't want anybody, executive or legislative, to be pigeonholed into a pathway that's not viable. They have to be able to take the existing land within Cuyahoga County, and a decision will have to be made. So they have, as far as I'm concerned, they have the flexibility, regardless of what has been said over the months, to find the best viable option when it comes time to a land selection. They need them to have all their options on the table when it comes down to the financing, regardless of what has been said. When this project moves forward, and there is a commitment, I believe, by this body for it to happen, we will have the leadership of our county executive, our incoming executive, and we will work together. I've had conversations with our county executive, and it's my belief and his belief, we have said to one another that we can work together. We can partner. These things happened. There has been things said. There has been responses. But this will not create some festering problem. That is not going to happen. I expect the way despite our differences, we have always worked well and professionally together, and I expect the same with our incoming executive. We will be able to work together to bring to this community what is needed in the terms of a very humane facility, and we have a time frame in which to do that. So I support this legislation, and I look forward to moving forward not only on this piece, but in all the deliberations that are going to come in the coming days, weeks, months, and years to bring this project to fruition. So with that, I do ask for my colleagues' support. And with no other conversation, I am going to ask for a motion to accept at least the proposed substitute. We still have time for discussion, but a motion to accept the proposed substitute.
So moved.
It has been properly moved by Councilwoman Simon and seconded by Councilman Gallagher. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair, to my colleagues, to those listening, I believe in the residents of Cuyahoga County. I believe in having a good relationship with an incoming county exec. I believe in having a safe, clean, humane facility for individuals that have to spend some time in there. And I also believe in the responsible governance and making a way for a new jail for the residents of Cuyahoga County. So I will be supporting this motion. We've heard from all of our colleagues on different reasonings, and I think the majority of us agree. We all lived through it, what had happened. This is not retaliatory. We're in a legislative branch. It is our job to make sure that we make a way for what we know is needed. What was also stated from both candidates that ran, that was needed, that something needed to be done, whether that was a new jail or having funds available to fix our current jail. So I think this is a way for us to be ready on January 1st, and hopefully their transition team, the new county exec-elect, transition team is working on some of these issues to be ready to work with us on January 1st. But the one thing that we are giving them a leg on doing is having this pot of money so they won't have to go back through bonds and state taxes and all that. So I look at this as a way as me doing my job, and what the residents of District 7 elected me to do is to make sure to weigh the good, bad, and the ugly, and make sure that we have in place what is needed in this county. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Chairman?
Yes.
So I have been listening to the passionate discussion and debate here this evening, and to my colleagues Sharon and Miller. I agree with some of the very passionate comments that you made, and you almost confused me for a second. I look forward to working with the incoming executive on a myriad of issues raised here. But I also feel like some nights I can't sleep knowing what I witnessed in the jail on multiple occasions. And I feel that we need a solution sooner rather than later. And I know that this is we have an executive and a council, and we're co-equal parties of this government. A no vote for me would feel like I'm abdicating my responsibility in some kind of way. And I know I don't have as much information as you all, or skin in the game that you have. But for me, I feel like it's a foundation. I witnessed, the campaign and both of these candidates and their thoughts around this issue. But I feel like we need to show some leadership and move forward. I know you put a lot of time and energy into this project, and we need to do our jobs. So I will be supporting this measure to move forward.
Mr. President?
Councilman Miller.
First, a question to Mr. McAleer. How many special funds do we have that are created by ordinance?
Councilman, I'd have to look at how many funds we created by ordinance. It's probably less than 10, but I'd have to go back and look exactly how many over the past 12 years that have been approved by council.
Okay, so I would like that information. And just to my colleagues, I'm not going to speak again long, but just to share that I'm as committed to the jail and its importance and its urgency as everybody else here. What we have is a difference of opinion as to what's the right method and what's good budgeting. And I just see it differently, and I respect the opinions of each of my colleagues, and I hope that that all of you will extend me the same courtesy. Thank you.
Councilman.
I supported our colleague, Mike Gallagher, all the way through on this process. And every time there was something to support on this, I was there. I don't think we actually came to grips with, because I'm a fighter, when we got threatened to be sued, guess where I would have been with you, Mr. President? I would have been standing right next to you in that lawsuit if that would have taken place, because that's who I am, because it's the inner soul of who I am. The jail is the right thing. Doing the jail is the right thing to do. The timing is the right timing that we had set forth in the fall. Everything we had done, but we changed the rules also by acquiescing at that point in time. And so all I'm suggesting is that when we chose to do that, we chose also to not push the bullies that were bullying us. And my hat's off to Mike Gallagher for all he did. Clearly, he was trying to save this county council money. And clearly, I have no idea what's going to happen with the future. I have no idea. It's the numbers that we're throwing around do not bring into consideration what happens if we hit a recession. No, they have no factor in any of that. So we cannot forecast that far in the future. We can't even forecast 6 months in the future as to what it's going to do with cost. So my colleague, Mr. Miller, said, I hope that you can respect where the two of us are coming from in regards to this. I am supportive of the jail. I have been supportive of the jail all the way down the line, and I would have been standing right next to you, arm in arm, if those bullies would have tried to do that to us. Thank you.
Yes, the floor is yours.
My comment to my colleagues, Miller and Schron, someone stated earlier, I don't know, it may have come from one of you, but just as I understand where you feel, and I don't think any of us wanted to be in this position, but we're, right now, you both believed in the jail. So I'm asking why you wouldn't stand in solidarity with us. Just as someone stated earlier, we're just making sure that there's a foundation for the jail to be built. It's not cemented in stone, because just like the other legislations, we withdrew them. So I would ask that if you believe in the jail, and I know I've heard your comments over the years, that you would go ahead with this. Reason being, because we have the legislative authority to remove this when the new executive does take oath of office and they roll up their sleeves and they really want to work with the council president in moving forward for what he stated he wanted to occur. So in solidarity, we stand together on this issue. We really shouldn't be split, even though we have it looks like the majority to take it. But I don't see where we couldn't overturn this and have a conversation. I think the way I look at this, it is showing the incoming executive that we are serious about this. We are showing the residents of Cuyahoga County that we are serious about having a humane jail. And it does not mean that, it cannot be rescinded back or whatever the case may be. So that's just the only comment that I have.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of accepting the proposed substitute, say aye.
Council President?
And do a roll call.
Yes, well, let's do a roll call. Was there a question, or was that the
Vice
I
President?
was the only person who didn't make a comment.
Councilwoman Stevens, the floor is yours.
What I have to say is very similar to what Councilwoman Conwell just said. It is urgent that we have a better jail. Like my friend and colleague, Meredith Turner, within the first 6 months that I was on this council, I went to that jail twice. and I don't have any enemies that I would place in that jail. It is, as you all know, real estate is what I live and breathe on other days. I would never house any of the low-income people that we are targeted to serve in the nonprofit that I run in any portion of the jail facilities. I would never house anyone who was convicted of crimes in that jail facility. I, like my buddy here, believe that the food that they serve is totally unacceptable. If we as a society believe in reform and the ability to change people, why does it take us so long to invest in their change, in their ability to live better lives? If this takes us the step to saying, and the future county exec is someone I respect and have done business with, I know that he doesn't like to have his hands tied, but I believe this is a message that should be 100% 11, or I'm sorry, there are only 10 of us here today, telling the future county exec, we want to do business with you, and one of the first pieces of business we'd like for you and your team to help us solve is finding a jail site and getting a jail built to house people who have committed, or at least allegedly committed, crimes that are placed in our guardianship into a better facility so that we do not risk losing lives on a regular basis again. Mr. Chairman, as they say in Robert's Rules of Order, I move the previous question.
Mr. President, I just want to thank Councilwomen, both Stevens and Conwell, for your comments, and Meredith Turner about co-equal branch of government. This is really good dialogue. And at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. If we really care to move this forward, we would have been moving forward and not finding obstacles, including one today about, a procedural issue of, where we're going to put money. Actions speak louder than words. Let's go.
President? Just a reminder, as the ladies were speaking to the powers of the various branches of government here, I mean, one of the most, I suppose, one of the most important things that we do as a legislative body is have power of the purse. And again, having the control and of that, the ability to grant, appropriate money for a particular purpose or place it in a fund, it's one of the most important things we can do. And I think by taking a stand here, it's sending a message loud and clear to the next county executive that we're not fooling around, that this is an important project that needs to be started on immediately. And I would echo my colleagues' sentiments on this, and I would ask for my colleagues to fully support this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Councilman? Hopefully this will be the last. There's no doubt this has been a long road, and it's been bumpy. And I absolutely respect the opinions of everybody up here. There's no one, I've never heard we don't need a jail. I've not heard that from one single human being elected. And I think we're at the point where, how do we get there? I just think strongly that this is a step in the right direction. Like I said, there's access to plenty of dollars for the executive if he has intentions of moving on various other projects. But this is number one. And I don't think necessarily we have to agree on this. But I think, as we've shown in the past, that we're independent individuals. We're from different parts of the county. Sometimes, as Madam Simon and myself, some people would say different planets. But somehow, the one constant that this county has had for 11 and a half years plus has been a council that only worries about what's best for the taxpayers and those that we represent. And I just think this is a move forward. I look forward to working with my colleagues again on more pleasant things. Unfortunately, this is just beginning all over again. And not only will the new executive need this money as seed, I think he's going to need all of our support to move forward on what will be a very prickly project to get done. So again, I absolutely respect Mr. Schron and Mr. Miller. I've never heard them say anything but we need a new jail. And I think the contention here is how. And hopefully this is part of the answer to how. Thank you.
All right, at this time, Andrea, we're going to have a roll call.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens? Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Ms. Baker is absent. Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Tuma?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schron?
No.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Council President Jones?
Yes.
The motion carries. We have 8 voting in the affirmative and 2, Councilman Miller and Councilmember Schron, casting dissenting votes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Trevor. This item will be referred to the full body of council for second reading as substituted. At this time, is there any miscellaneous business? If not, if nothing else holds our attention, our council meeting is adjourned. Yes.